In this video, I just wanted to reflect a little bit on how we can communicate more effectively on social media, especially if you're working in the professional services space. At the end of the video, I'm going to provide 5 tips or techniques for you to think about, which I think will help you to communicate more effectively using these channels, social media channels. Before that though, I think we need to think a little bit about the fundamental question of why do we communicate at all in the professional services space. I believe that if a communication doesn't have specific objectives or achieve specific goals, then we need to revisit the strategy we're using to communicate the message, or to consider not messaging about that issue or not communicating at all. In other words, every single communication we make in professional services must be targeted, must be prepared, and has to have certain objectives in mind. What are 2 key objectives? Well, we want our messages to reach a target audience usually, although sometimes it can be generic audience, but we're trying to get target audiences to listen to us. And this is particularly the case on social media, to listen to us and not to listen to others. We want target audiences to listen to our message or our communication, and even better, to respond in a way that is beneficial to us, whether you're an individual, or it's part of a team, or an organisation as a whole. If we can't at least get people to listen to our message, or to even act or respond in some way, then yeah, like I said before, we need to go back and rethink whether it's worth doing in the first place. This is particularly challenging when it comes to using social media as a communications channel. Some figures to bear in mind. We all think that when we use social media, for instance, if we tweet a message out, okay, we all think that that message is worth sending out. But we often forget that it's being sent out in a certain context. For example, if you use Twitter as a way to communicate with target audiences, bear in mind that in 2018, there are now 500 million tweets sent every day. So that's, if my mathematics is correct, it's 6,000 tweets a second. There's a lot of noise out there. There's a lot of churn that can distract target audiences. So if you're going to use a channel like that to communicate, you need to bear that in mind when you're preparing how you're going to use that channel to reach those goals I mentioned before. Other interesting statistics, I mean, there are now, I think, there are 325 million Twitter accounts that exist around the world. In terms of websites, the numbers are staggering now. There are almost 2 billion websites these days. Not all of them are active or even very good. But when you consider there was only 1 billion 4 years ago, okay? And 8 years ago there were only about 200 million websites, okay? You can see the point that these channels are being clogged up. Okay? That's not to say we don't use them, but I think we need to use them in ways that get our audiences to listen to us and perhaps respond. And if we're not reaching those objectives, then we really need to rethink why are we using these channels at all? Because they take time up, valuable time. I want to just give 5 techniques or tips that will, I think, help you at least reflect on how you can communicate more effectively. The first tip is the messenger, the person sending the message, has to be authentic. What do I mean by that? Well, on social media, all the research proves that audiences will congregate around individuals, individuals that have certain characteristics. One of the reasons why I discourage or don't place as much of a priority on company brands sending out messages is that I think that our audiences will tend to listen more to a specific individual communicating with them. Now, that individual typically will be known to the audience, right? Or if he or she is not known, will have some appeal to that audience. And much depends, when I do my work with clients, on working out what those characteristics are that target audiences respond to. If you can't differentiate yourself as a messenger using social media, you're going to struggle to get audiences to listen to you, especially when they can consider a range of other individuals messaging them. So that's the first one. Work on what are the key traits that the target audience I'm trying to reach value or congregate around when an individual is messaging to them. The second one is authenticity of message. Not only must the messenger be authentic and appeal compared to other messengers to a target audience, but the message itself must be authentic. It must be easy to understand, and it must be on a subject that's interesting to the audience. I'm staggered at the number of messages I see sent out from professional service organisations that are simply not about issues that are of interest to most people. So they have to be about a subject of interest. Now, this is a bit controversial, but when it comes to authenticity of messaging, and if the message is about normative issues, issues that affect society, for instance, we need to be extra careful. Let me give you an example, say, of diversity. Now, we all know the benefits of diversity for organisations, okay? But I would say if I see messages, for instance, I'm proud to attend an event about diversity. We were proud to host a summit on diversity. What do they really tell me? Not much, to be quite frank. I'd much rather read a message about how that organisation is committed to diversity, or even to hear from a messenger, perhaps not the head of diversity, but someone within the organisation who is a beneficiary of the diversity policy of the organisation. So authenticity of messenger, authenticity of message, very important. They're two tips. Third tip about language. Be careful about using buzzwords. Okay? Words can lose meaning. They can lose power through repeated abuse and overuse. I keep seeing, for instance, messages about how proud people are about everything, how excited they are about everything. Now that's fine, okay? You can be excited and proud, but if everyone is using the same words all the time, it can come across as a little bit inauthentic. It can come across as what you are meant to say, as opposed to what that messenger is actually wanting to say about a certain issue. So I'm not saying don't use the words, but keep in mind that there are certain buzzwords being used all the time, and especially with social media, their overuse means that they can lose meaning and power compared to other people using different words. So language and words matter. So that's the third tip. So we've got authenticity of messenger, authenticity of message, be careful about language, that's the third tip. The fourth tip, important. The visual is becoming more important than text. Videos are more powerful than using text format for communication. Now, we can't always put up a video and people have limited time, etc. But if you have an option and you can use a video as opposed to text, consider that. It's more powerful. It gives you far more scope to differentiate yourself, especially that first tip about the messenger. It gets people to consider you in a new light as opposed to someone who's just typing out a text message. Okay, so that's the fourth tip. Consider using video. I suppose the fifth tip is, if in doubt, leave it out. If you can't frame a communication that meets the objectives, which is to get it listened to be different enough so it is listened to, and get your target audience to respond in a way that's positive or beneficial for you, the team or the organisation, then consider not communicating via social media. It is at the end of the day just another communication channel. You don't have to use it reflexively. It's not going to give your organisation, team or yourself any more power or effectiveness to be just sending out streams as a sort of streams of communication as a sort of reflex. So if in doubt, just consider leaving it out. Don't necessarily use social media at all. In this video, I've tried to provide some thought, I suppose, about how to communicate more effectively on social media. Keep in mind the environment's always changing. It's harder to communicate on social media than ever before in a way that's effective. Keep in mind every communication needs to be objective, as well as the 5 tips that I've provided you, which I hope will assist you as you try to communicate with target audiences using these new channels.